Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's stream. We are a bit late, I think we're 2 minutes over, but we're here and hope everyone is keeping nice and warm. As far as I understand, it's been very cold across the entire South Africa, and thematically, I'm sick here with a red nose and congestion and a sore throat. So, for those of you that are concerned about me kind of just going on tangents and blabbering, you are in luck tonight because my vocal cords are a bit strained. So we have tonight with us myself. We also have Yusha, which some of you might know from FEDSA. He's also joining, so he is does most of our operational work, but he's also a product designer as part of his day job. And then also we have Veer here, who I've invited to come talk about kind of what he has been involved with over the last 2 years, specifically a story that some of you guys might know about, like some fraud that was kind of uncovered at SASSA about like 2 years ago, which he's one of the two-man team that actually ended up uncovering that. So he's going to talk a bit about that, kind of how that happened, like the technical aspect of that, but also just like the story behind it. So yeah, without further ado, Yusha, I'm happy for you to just give a quick intro in terms of who FEDSA is, what we do, and where people can get in touch with us, and then I'll pick it up again.
Awesome. Thanks, Golk. Hi, everyone. You might have seen my name on emails or in the Discord channel or on LinkedIn. I do want to assure you that I'm not a bot. I'm a real person. And it's fun to join tonight. It's a very last-minute decision. I usually just press all the buttons in the background, but here I am. Cool. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, FEDSA stands for Front-End Engineering and Design South Africa. We are a South African tech community, and we're primarily focused on the kind of knowledge sharing in the tech space in South Africa. So we primarily do that through our online talks, and hopefully we will be doing some in-person events again at some point. No promises, but we're starting to think about that. So stay tuned. I'd also just like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without the financial support and I guess just the support of the community by these three companies, so KRS and NML and IO. They're really amazing companies that support the work we do here and make all of this possible. If you want to get involved, I apologize, I did not update.
I saw that and I was like, oh, man.
Very last minute situation.
So yeah, for clarification, this is not Rudy van Wyk.
Okay, we'll skip over that one. We're going to stop here, but essentially, if you want to get a hold of us, you're welcome to join our Discord community. I'll see if I can get a quick QR code or a link in the comments once I hand back over to Skulk. But you're welcome to join our LinkedIn or follow us on LinkedIn, join our Discord community. We have a really, really cool newsletter that goes up bi-weekly. We don't spam, I promise, like pinky promise. How do you do it? I don't know. It's a very cool one. We've got one going out tomorrow morning at 6. So if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, I would like to encourage you. I'll also pop a link for that in the chat. Cool. Awesome. Over back to you, Scott.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. So cool. I'll try and keep this short. So I kind of knew about what Veer is going to talk about just from the news and so forth. I think I saw the story the first time on Ground Up. So I know the high level details. I kind of understand kind of the broader, like kind of what happened, but I'll leave it up to him to kind of just talk about the specifics, talk about the technical details. But yeah, like so I kind of met him at DevConf. Both of us were speakers, and just as an aside, it's wild, man. I'm not gonna lie, like I'm so intimidated by how young you are. Like it is wild when I think about like what I was up to like at that age. Like I didn't have any clue, man. So yeah. Like I think there's also a nice segue to talk about like what you're up to nowadays with the pen testing and the security and the stuff. But yeah, it was a very interesting experience having someone that young at DevConf. I think we gave him a really hard time. Like all the old bullies, like we're just like picking on him the whole time as the young one. But yeah, dude, like I just have so much respect for the stuff that you do, and it's so impressive. Especially at your age. So yeah, I'm happy for you to kind of give a bit more context in terms of who you are, and kind of what you're going to be talking about tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Scott, for the intro. I feel like next year I'm gonna bully you at DevConf if I speak with you again. It's time. It's the return of the kids. But my name is Veer Gosai. I'm currently an undergraduate student at Stellenbosch University, studying a Bachelor's of Science in Geoinformatics with a major in computer science. And in 2024, during the first year of my studies, I was one of the security researchers who found fraud in the SASSA grant system. You might have seen this story floating around on various news channels, but initially published on Ground Up. I soon made my way over to the Parliament of South Africa to actually present these findings I'm going to show you today. And I've often been told this is a super cool, interesting story. There's not many 19-year-old kids who are doing nonsense like this, as my mom says. But I think we can get started with my presentation. So I start like this kind of always. These are 13 random characters. To you, they might seem just like random letters, but they actually mean something. And that being the South African national ID number. So the first two digits being the year, followed by the month, the day. But I specifically want to zone into this gender number over here. What it means is basically from 0 to 5,000, it's female identity numbers. And then from 5,000 to 9999, it's the male ID numbers. But the idea around this is that means there's only 10,000 possible ID numbers per day. And this is going to be very contextually important for later. But what I discovered in my research was a simple post request based off the response could actually tell a lot. And this was completely unauthenticated and from a publicly facing point of view. And at the end of the day, we have one ID number, which we do kind of everything with. So what happens when not one ID number, but a few more, but even more, captures a nation's social grant system? Because this ID number is used for everything we do in our day-to-day lives, whether it's getting credit, voting, your education records, financial records, driver's license, taxes. And we need to actually think, who do we actually trust this ID number with? And how governments process this data needs to be done in a proper manner. So once again, my name is Veer Gosai, Stellenbosch student, also a part-time security researcher and pen tester. In my early days, I also founded an education company called Taptic. And now I'm working towards hopefully finishing my undergrad and doing a postgrad Stellenbosch, or maybe working, still deciding on what to do. So let's get started with the talk. Oh, this over here is the original article titled "We Discovered Massive Fraud in SASSA Grant System." Now, I did this story with my very close friend Joel Cedres, who I actually met in a Stellenbosch University class, our computer science tutorial, and we kind of just hit it off, and that's where the story starts. And then just a little disclaimer, none of the methods I am presenting today are possible anymore. So if it is a security vulnerability, it has been patched, and I am allowed to talk about it publicly today. So this is kind of the flow of today's presentation. I'm going to start by talking about how people actually were able to mass create the social grant, but also then create a bank account on your identity. Then we're going to talk a little bit about data anomalies in the grant system and how do we actually fix the grant system in its current state. So the context of the SASSA SRD grant is around a very, very dark time, coronavirus time, COVID-19. In May 2020, the South African government released out a 350 Rand social grant, or about 21 US dollars, which was meant to provide financial relief to anyone who's been financially distressed by the pandemic. Recently, in 2024, it did become 370 Rand after Treasury approved it. But this grant is actually paid out to around 7.5 million South Africans every single month. Now, to create the SASSA grant, you needed 4 things. Firstly, you needed any SIM card, very easy to get in South Africa. As a matter of fact, I've publicly reported on 2 mobile virtual network operators that actually were not implementing RICA. So you could go on there, put any single ID number, and it would actually just give you a free eSIM to use, RECAD and ready to use, receive SMSs, whatever you need. The next thing you needed is an ID number and then a first name and a last name. Now, the ID number and first name and last name had to match in this case. But as we'll discuss later, unfortunately, a rise in data breaches means that data is just floating around anyway. So to open the SASSA grant, you'd put in your phone number, get the OTP, and then throw in your ID number, first name, and last name. You'd then be prompted to answer lifestyle questions. And these are pretty stock standard and obvious. Have you worked in the past 3 months? Do you transact less than a specific amount? Are you in financial distress? Very easy to answer questions to just kind of on a trust system. Are you eligible for this grant? And one thing you need to know about SASSA grants is a SASSA grant has to be paid for to your bank account. So the bank account has to be on your ID number. That means I can't, for example, open my mom's SASSA grant and have it paid to me. It has to go to a bank account that my mom opened. But there was a problem with 2 South African banks. Now, I want to say this publicly. South Africa has some world-class banks. We're talking better than America, better than Europe. Our financial system is so well designed and protected that it's genuinely world-class, better than first world. But 2 of the banks had an issue when opening a bank account. So normally try to open a bank account, you'd be prompted with that KYC or facial scan, right? And that's when you do a selfie on your phone. Or back in the day, we used to actually go to a bank branch and put a fingerprint. And when you'd actually match to your DHA photo or your fingerprint in branch, you'd be given that bank account. And that's the KYC process that South Africa follows. You're only allowed to start transacting, such as move money, get an ATM card to start withdrawing money and exist in our financial system once the bank knows who you are. But 2 of the banks had a major issue. On failing that KYC scan, you'd be asked some questions about your credit profile. What does that look like? For example, are you a registered director of any of these companies? Do you have a cell phone contract with this specific provider? Or what is your credit card limit amount? Or what is your address? And the thing you actually have to remember is the primary target of the fraud was actually the youth of the country. Now, I don't know many students who actually have a credit card or a cell phone contract. So the answers to that are kind of obvious. And even in the case that it's not obvious, you can just guess until you get it right. And actually, on succeeding with that process, you'd receive kind of a limited bank account. Now, the banks of South Africa have their internal names for this. But these limited bank accounts couldn't transact the normal way. So you wouldn't get a bank card and you can't just EFT money out or go draw money at an ATM. But what you could do is receive money and then make use of so you could buy airtime and vouchers. So that's kind of the fraud flow of how the bank accounts are actually being able to open on anyone's identity number. So I, as a random individual, could pick a random ID number I found on somewhere and just open the bank account on that person and start receiving funds into that account. So before we move on, I'm just going to take a moment to ask, are there any questions before we continue?
No, but there is just a couple of people mentioning that they're like super excited for this. Also, a quick message about like kind of people just saying like, like saying like you're doing amazing work in the space of cybersecurity and so forth. So, thus far, just expectations that hopefully are going to be met. So no pressure.
Good stuff.
But yeah, like I already have a ton. So yeah, let's keep going because once I start asking, like, there's no end.
Awesome. Yeah. So that kind of covers the idea of how do we create the grant and then create the bank account. But we actually have to look at how people, random South Africans or illegal actors or criminals actually got access to this data. Remember, SIM card, we've covered how easy that's to get. But the name, surname, and ID number, you'd expect to be difficult. And I remember I was talking to a security researcher who works in the American state intelligence scene. And he actually said to me, like, our social security number and personal information is no longer a threat to national security. And the reason for that is because, it's just so out there. I mean, let's start with it. First thing, dark web and data leaks. I mean, I actually run something called Dark Notify. It's an underground dark web monitoring system for enterprises, and we've seen an alarming amount of data breaches this year, especially 2025 and 2026 are on the increase. And no one actually sits down and talks about the true impact of the dark web leaks, right? Oftentimes, maybe a company will get hit with a regulatory fine. That's not solving the problem of identity fraud. It actually makes it a little bit worse. Secondly, we're going to talk about the internet. And yes, right there, that's the government gazette, straight from gov.za. Certain kind of documents have to be publicly published with information due to transparency law. So this supersedes papaya and all the laws. Judging this is from my lawyer GPT, but in the government gazette, there's publicly available data that matches. But secondly, if you go to a social media platform like Facebook, and you just search for lost ID, you'll see a lot of people will just find lost IDs and post actual real pictures of lost IDs, uncensored. Some censor them, but most of them are uncensored just for anyone to kind of use. And that's kind of a big issue, which Meta hasn't addressed yet. Next up, we're talking enterprise systems. How many times have you sat on a call with a bank and that bank call center employee asks, we need to verify yourself. Can you read out your ID number to me? Or just the fact that, when you're dealing with certain industries, ID numbers just float around. Fourth, human systems. We're talking about medical records, in the hospital, or, when you're entering a gated estate and you actually have to take out your license and give it to them and they scan it, stored on device through the barcode at the back. Or even if you're at a liquor shop, I mean, in some places you'll get ID'd, they might take a picture of your ID card. These are all kind of risks to your identity. But finally, I'm going to talk about this, government systems itself, because we've all been vaccinated. And at DevConf, I asked, put your hand up if you've been vaccinated. And I made a horrible joke that no one laughed at. It was like, haha, your data has been stolen. But the EVDS system actually had a security issue where you could just throw in any randomly valid generated ID number and it would spit back the full kind of case information of that person. So if you throw an ID number, you'd get full name, surname, as well as how many doses and which dose of the vaccine that individual got. And on reporting this to the Department of Health, it was already 2024, around the time of the SASSA issue. And their solution was just to shut down the platform because it was going to be shut down at the end of the year anyways. But we don't know if this has actually been exploited. And it hasn't thankfully been seen on the dark web yet. So we can see how these two are linked together, right? You get a mass amount of data from the dark web, you chuck it into SASSA system, open up 1,000 grants, and then open the bank accounts corresponding to that. And that's kind of the flow of fraud. And now we're going to talk about fraud modeling. It's my favorite kind of thing. I am very bad at math, but I know enough to talk about this. So when we specifically talk about like the normal distribution of a social grant system for general people, right? We're not talking about, pension or childcare. This is for the normal unemployed person. What would you expect the distribution of, grant recipients and applicants to actually look like? And what I always say is if the green line at the top is your population and the red line is your unemployed population, in this case 50%, you'd always want your application rate to sit in the red area, right? So we're talking, the principle of that being the number of social grant application should always kind of, on average, exist below that unemployment line. If it's a little bit over or near the line, that's okay. But what happens when it looks like this? I mean, we've got more applications for a specific age group than people existing. So that's a big problem. And the kind of basis for this is there are 3.65 million possible ID numbers for a year, because 10,000 ID numbers a day, and there's about 800,000 people born in South Africa in a year. So on average, if you randomly generate a ID number, there's kind of a 1/4 chance that it'll be valid, even though there's a different distribution to that. I mean, ID numbers are actually issued sequentially. So if you pick, from 5,000 to 6,000 of the gender kind of gap, you're more likely to hit a positive ID number. But through a vulnerable API, I was essentially able to find out the true distribution of the SASSA grant SRD system. Now, the basis of our mass fraud claim, this was presented to the Parliament of South Africa in October 2024. There were 82,000 births in February 2005. So we ran February, it was the least amount of dates we had to run. And out of the 82,000 people born in February, there were 74,931 SASSA grant applications. That's 91% of people born in that month. Slightly too high. So we looked a bit further. And we went and we tested the first 1,000 people born on January 1st between 1960s and 2006. Specifically 2006, because at the time, that's when you turn 18 and would be allowed to apply for the social grant. And what we noticed is, on average, people born between 1960 and 2001 had on average 50% of the people had applied for the grant. Between 2002 and 2006, over 90% of the people applied for the grant. So that data didn't quite line up. And here's the API documentation from back in the day. I had no clue what I was doing. I learned what an API was 2 weeks ago. I've always been a Python developer and Pascal, because I did it at school. But only when I got to the SASSA time did I actually start getting into security research. So the actual security issue highlighted here was if you threw in an ID number and a random phone number. So we used to put 060 000 000. The response, if there was a SASSA grant, would be phone number not found. If there wasn't a SASSA grant, it would be party not found for ID number. And that's displayed over here. So if there was no SASSA grant, party not found. If there was a SASSA grant, then it would say phone number not found. And that's how we were able to do this. Now that red line is the births of South Africa. This graph goes from 1990 all the way to 2006, and it's a month graph. So again, 800-ish thousand people born in South Africa every year, and this over here is our applications. Now, South Africa has a 44% unemployment rate. You can argue that the youth unemployment rate is much higher, but when you truly take a look at it, this yellow area represents the fraud, right? It's okay if it's a little bit above, but this is shockingly high, to the point at which we had some months when 96% of the population had actually applied for the SASSA grant. And when you truly look at SASSA's numbers they put out, they just didn't line up. So we've seen how the data anomaly has been presented in Parliament, and we're like, okay, how do we fix this? We need to get the right people the 370 every month. I mean, 370 Rand is not a lot of money, But for a person who has nothing, no job, it's a lot of money. It's the difference between going hungry and having a little bit of food to survive. So initially I was like, okay, we have to completely restart the system. But there's actually a big contextual issue with this. More than half the people in South Africa live below the poverty line. And we actually need to understand it's not easy for a legitimate applicant to apply for this grant. And we've spoken to a lot of people out there. I've received many emails from like curious South Africans, people who wanted to voice their opinions at the time. And the truth and the fact of the matter is people actually have to borrow phones to apply for this thing, or travel to a SASSA office, right? Take a day off work or a day off your maybe informal job to actually travel to a SASSA office to town, which is 100 to 300 rand, right? Or what about people who live offline, right? They actually have to go to Department of Home Affairs, it's another day of leave off, and go to actually get an ID card. So we actually can't restart the system. We actually have to fix it. And then it goes to the second issue of South Africa. There's a huge identity crisis in South Africa, not by population numbers, but if we look at this number that's actually thrown out, it's our pass rate. But I'm not actually talking about the number of learners who pass. I wrote matric exams I wrote matric exams about 3 years ago. And the one thing you needed to write your matric exams was a smart ID card. They wouldn't let you write your matric exams if you didn't come with the smart ID card or the ID book if you're not a citizen. And when you look at the people who don't actually make it to actually get the opportunity to write that matric exams, it's 484,000 people, or about 40% of learners don't make it to that matric exams. So the issue then is the same people who are more likely to not be educated, as in they might have dropped out, are the same individuals who also don't have the smart ID card. And the reason then goes to this, right? Okay, you're not in school, you're less likely to get an ID card because of the same problems of applying for the grant. And you can't actually facially verify a person, do a KYC or a KYC check, because we don't know how you are. There's no Department of Home Affairs photo actually attached to you. So the issue then comes to, we can't verify you, we can't pay you out. So, right, let's kind of assume if we throw a bunch of money at the identity crisis and, open Department of Home Affairs branches everywhere, and we can actually solve this crisis, it actually doesn't solve the crisis fully because of two more issues. And I'm going to go into a tangent now on how KYC works. So I talk about this facial scan, but have you ever opened a banking app? You're signing in for the first time, and you look at the screen and it starts flashing colors. And that's a very cool technology. It actually reads the reflection of the color from your face and uses that as a liveness test. And it also uses a bunch of other things. I did a short internship at a facial recognition company, and the tech behind it is super cool and it's awesome. They use a bunch of other things like is your phone jailbroken, or timestamps, or checking your IP address and location, as well as the applications on your phone. And sorry, this slide was meant to be for the flashing, but when we actually deploy a system in production for real world, there's a huge problem, because we're talking about deep fakes and artificial intelligence models that with one picture of a social media post, you can actually replicate a live human being. And I always go back to this hidden in my diagram. The problem then goes to the match. On the middle of the screen, that's my actual Home Affairs ID photo. Probably shouldn't be putting that out on the internet, but it's out there. And on the right is a selfie of an iPhone 13 that was used to authorize a payment in one of South Africa's big 5 banks. Funny story, I remember walking into the bank branch and saying, "Hi, can I please get my selfies?" I did wait 2 hours that day. And apparently no one has ever done that before, but there's a first time for everything. And I was probably the first person to ever do that. And it goes then to this. People age, right? The third issue being there's actually outdated photos for many people. If you got your ID card 20 years ago, or the last kind of fingerprint or facial recognition blueprint we have of you is 20 years old, it's a problem. We can't actually match you. And I mean, I've grown a lot in 4 years, if you see in the slide, but people age. And it also goes then to an environmental thing. People in South Africa live in much harsher climates, no AC, a lot of them have to walk. And so it makes it even more difficult for people to actually access this grant. Next up is the technology. I mean, would you trust that picture, that match over there, with your bank account, right? With your credit, with your own financial identity? And the reason is because most South Africans don't even have an iPhone 13. And in my education platform, it's a very good example, because we're one of the biggest past paper sites in the country. And we've noticed that the most common phone in South Africa is a very mid-range phone, but more low end. We're talking like the Galaxy A04Es, brands I never even heard of. And that's the issue. If this is what an iPhone's giving you, what happens to a person in a rural area, or a person who doesn't have access to the latest and greatest of technology to verify themselves? So then, here's some more selfies for you to laugh at. The thing then being, if we live in a world where we depend on facial recognition for KYC, how effective is it actually? And deep in here, I've actually hidden a AI generated picture, which is the second one from the left. So I remember I took one of the pictures from my Instagram, threw it into an AI model. I was like, hey, I need a picture for an ID card, and it just generated that. And with a little bit more prompt skills and injection and with a jailbroken phone and spoofing, you might actually be able to pass that into a bank app and get into someone's account. So then, where do we actually draw the line with the SASSA grant? Remember, 370 Rand for 7 million people. Do we kind of just make it an honesty system so anyone can just apply and get it unverified? Do we, draw the line at the kind of, oh, you only need your name and surname to match, and the bank account needs to match and we'll pay it out? Or do we go all crazy and say, hey, you can't use ATM cash. You have to verify yourself with a flagship phone every 3 months, because it has a real human impact. And I'd like to kind of end off with this being, it's very easy for stakeholders at large corporations and government organizations to say, oh, it's one click of a button to increase our security, or it's one click of a button to just wipe out an entire group of individuals who are sitting in a place you've never been to, who actually it impacts the most, more than you, because these people are the most vulnerable people in the country who actually depend on the 370 to survive. So what ended up happening? In 2024 October, after my Parliament presentation with Joel, auditors were appointed, and then in January 2025, the auditors proved our findings, and SASSA began to implement the changes as of February 2025, which was great news, because our recommended changes was to kind of just curb the fraud to a level where it's trustable, and that people aren't being financially excluded from the financial system, or people who actually depend on this grant don't have any interruption. And I leave you with one question. How do we actually build systems to withstand a developing world? In a country with a large crisis, many people who can't actually afford to make their way over to a Department of Home Affairs office and a SASSA office, how do we build a system that's worth living for in South Africa? Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity that you've given me here today. And yeah, I guess we can go over to you, Skalk, if you have any questions.
I have a ton. Thanks so much, dude. That was really cool. Yeah, there's a couple of comments here. There's one actually by Skalk Neetling as well, a good friend of mine as well, saying that these statistics are frightening but also sobering. We all need to see what we can do to help. There's too much talent and promise in this country to let it go down the tubes. And I really want to quickly mention before I dive into my personal questions, like I really appreciate the fact that, I think the very naive and like almost like brain rot take would be like, oh, there's so much corruption here. SASSA itself is a problem. And like, I think this is also very topical because I think a lot of the reporting now about everything that happened in the US with like Doge and Elon Musk and whatever, like I think a lot of the reporting around the impact of that is actually now getting released. And like turns out like we're looking at like substantial amount of like even just child deaths and stuff. So that's why I also appreciate like you talking about like it's not possible to just restart it. Because these are like, this is kind of like a perfect storm insofar that like these are definitionally like the most vulnerable people in South Africa right now. Like I've had the privilege of working. So also very topically, Skalk Neetling, who I just mentioned, he also did some work for Open Up. I also worked at Open Up at some point. And you spoke about gazettes and stuff, and we were kind of very involved in a project called Open Gazettes at the time, which is wild actually that at that point, I don't know if this is still the case, but for some provinces you had to pay to receive the gazette, which is wild. Yeah, I know. Like, don't even get me started. It's like so. The Gazette is how laws get published, but you have to pay to see what the law in the country is. But anyway, so Open Gazettes was effectively, I think, like the I can probably just say it's like the Pirate Bay of gazettes, or what was that one, Mega Upload or whatever. You know, it's like you can share if you've bought a gazette or whatever, you can share it on there. But
this is
anyway,
my dad talks about phone books, right?
yes. Like as an aside, you know, like so, like man, like we were giving this guy such a hard time at DevConf, you know, like he would be like, yeah, do you guys remember? Do you remember when Fortnite just came out? I'm like, dude, like, what? I remember when computers just came out.
Oh, man.
But yeah, like, so I appreciate that because I think our natural inclination would be to like kind of demonize SASSA as an institution and demonize like SASSA recipients. And I think one thing we have to remember, this is a failure on the part of those that are meant to administer this service, this structure, this institution. It's a failure on the people who are supposed to run it. And I think it's also very, very easy to go like, yeah, you know, this is why the government, South African government, you know, I'm Afrikaans, like I kind of like, you know, Afrikaans people, you should know is what I'm talking about, like, yeah, the government, man. But like, I think it's also one thing we have to also understand, and I think I know this from working for National Treasury for a while and like being very involved in the civic tech space, is that most of this stuff is done by private companies that get contracted out. It's very rare that it's the government itself that's kind of like building out this infrastructure and whatever. Like they are contracting out some private company, some big tech house in South Africa to build these things. So I think like we should be cognizant of that, and we should try and hold those guys accountable, and say like you know, like you're getting paid a lot of money, and this is tax money, and this is money that I pay as taxes to build this thing. Like, you need to do better. You can't build something that is this brittle and then just take the money and run. And like, as I said, these are private companies. But anyway, I don't want to go too much into that, but it's one of my big pet peeves, having worked in civic technology for a while, is that like everyone's angry at the wrong people. The people are like these contractors. It's actual private companies that are kind of like messing all this stuff up. Another thing I also just quickly wanted to mention is I've actually been the victim of identity theft. Yes, we spoke about this, didn't we?
We did. I do remember.
Yes. I was raging about that. I think I was raging about that at DevConf itself, and also like all the way on the shuttle ride back to the hotel as well. But like the irony being that like when it eventually like we traced what happened, it was actually my identity was stolen when I went to go RICA my phone. So, like, to get a new phone contract, I had to go RICA at Telkom, and someone at Telkom leaked my information to like a crime syndicate or something. Yeah, so like that's kind of the irony, as you mentioned. Like when we think about like our data getting stolen or whatever, we tend to think about like, oh, this like shady, like, I don't know, quick easy loans.com or whatever, or or buy cheap vapes.co or whatever. But like a lot of this happens like through things like getting RICA'd, like as you mentioned, like actually giving your official documents in order to write your matric exam, all those things. It's crazy, man. Yeah.
Just on that, so I've done a lot of investigations into some fraud, and 3 weeks before I even started the investigation, I walked into one of the big four, sell shops, right? Because I actually genuinely needed a SIM card for a spare phone. So I walked in and I was like, "Hi, can I buy a SIM card? Don't RICA it because I said I'll RICA at home. I was busy that day." And the lady in the shop straight up tried to sell me a pre-RICA SIM. And it only hit me like when I walked out, that like that's a norm, right? It's not just one cell shop, or they call them taxi sims. You can buy them at a taxi rank or any shop, but it's a very large scale problem, and it's very easy to say, oh, let's deactivate them all. But I've dealt with investigators, and we've seen the RICA database, man. There's been the most horrendous names. There's been Mickey Mouse in the database. Just like, how did this get here? And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate that I mean, RICA on paper is a great law. It should actually curb a lot of cybercrime and deal with a lot of the big issues in court cases with evidence, testimony, and all of that. But because of its failure, it's a real issue. And I remember when I was dealing with this case initially, I was like, okay, who controls RICA? Right? I had a RICA issue. Who controls it? And my mind was like, obviously it's ICASA, right? You think, oh, it's probably ICASA. They always make noise in telecommunications, but it actually isn't. So I then went to DCDT. I was like, okay, surely you guys deal with RICA. And it all came down to RICA sits with the Department of Justice. Because it's a law in South Africa, the database is controlled by them, it's maintained by them, and so it all the time just sits with them. And the Department of Justice is under a lot of strain. They don't have capacity a lot of times, and we need kind of a organization to step in, not contract it out, and just address the issues as quick as they can.
And it's very interestingly, I'll maybe quickly mention this, and then I'll bring up some of the questions that were asked in the text chat, is that I actually know someone personally that worked for the company that was contracted out to build out a lot of this RICA infrastructure. I think you also know who that is. And he said, like, if I knew what that process looked like, and or if I could see into the guts of this RICA thing, like I would not be able to sleep at night knowing just how exposed my personal information is. But anyway.
And I mean, what the problem I've noticed between, when you deal with the Americans and Europeans and Chinese, which I've been fortunate to do recently, you actually realize South Africa has a missing gap. So in America, banking is a lot less regulated. And the reason that is, when your identity gets stolen or something happens, you can call the FBI. Like, the FBI actually does their job, goes and does the cyber research, tracks that person's down and goes for them. But in South Africa, we have the Hawks, which kind of deal with, high violence crime and big cases of cash in transit and that. And then we have the SIU, whose mandate is to just recover funds. Now there's SAPs, and I've dealt with some SAPs people, and there's a very much kind of a skill shortage in SAPs when it comes to fraud or identity fraud. The problem then becomes it actually goes into the bank, right? And it's actually not like, it's not a law that, oh, the bank has to deal with your identity fraud, and it's the reason why we have such high banking standards. It's because of actually the reputational risk for that bank. I mean, we've all scrolled through LinkedIn and we've seen that one oak complaining about how he's not being helped at a specific bank. And, working in banking, after you spend some time at a bank, it hurts you to see this, right? Because you know how the processes are supposed to work. But what would happen if the banks just did nothing and fraud was mayhem, and all of a sudden every 2 minutes another person's posting on social media that they've been scammed or identity's been stolen? So the banks tend to work really hard on it in South Africa, but we kind of need SAPs to step in now to say, okay, let's push, cybercrime. Let's kind of upskill people and have a specific cybercrimes unit that's massive, constantly doing threat intelligence and all the stuff. So it's monitored and it's done properly.
But yeah, oh man, there's so many great stuff to unpack here. Like I want to be cognizant of, like, there are questions in the text chat, and I also want to ask you, Asha, some questions as well. But like, see, the problem there is, like, like someone like yourself or whatever, like, you're not going to be like, you know what, my dream is to go work for SAPS. I want to work for the South African Police Services. Like that's, like all the cybersecurity stuff, that's what I want to do, and it's a massive structural problem, and it's an incentive problem, and I think it's also a priority problem. Like it's hard to justify investing millions and millions of rands into this, like, when they are literally, like, I don't even want to, like, cite the, what is it, like, how many people get raped, like, every minute or whatever.
Really bad. It's it's something horrible.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I guess on that note, like, let me get some of the text questions here. So Jonathan, hi Jonathan, thanks for joining us. It's been a while since you joined one of these. So he said on how to proceed after you've picked up a leak breach, and what to do if there's no response remedy from the source or organization. Yeah,
this is a very good question, and I've gotten variants of it before, and truthfully what I'm going to tell you is the best you can do is actually reach out to South African Fraud Prevention Services, SASSA.
Yes.
That's always the one on my list, but I think in South Africa, unfortunately, there's actually not a lot you can do.
Yes.
Sometimes you just have to wait it out. SAFPS is backlogged all the time, so it might take 3 days. But the best thing you can do is calm down and, just hope that the regulator will address it. The other thing I always like to, talk about is so in South Africa, right, we have some of the best cybersecurity professionals in the world. And you actually have to do rigorous, constant testing in South Africa, right? If you're a South African company, just do the testing, because it saves the breach in the first place. And we're talking, don't just do a pen test, right? And then, 2 weeks later, devs are making changes and an issue gets raised. You have to, do an annual pen test and then rigorously test anything that moves to production. And then another annual pen test every single year. And you got to swap firms, right? You can't just say, oh, every year firm A is going to do my security testing, because all firms are different. I mean, when you go to security conferences and talk to security researchers, everyone's a every kind of origin has a speciality. So South African researchers are very good at offensive. When it comes to blue team, not so much. I mean, some of the best blue team researchers I know come from the Nordic countries, and in the UK, they have some great researchers that are very good with, Windows and all that. But it's just keep on doing the proactive testing.
Yeah, like to your point, like I mean, like I see you're wearing a B-sides shirt, like it's I think it's indicative that like one of our probably most longest standing, except for like Dev Conf and so forth, like conferences or annual like kind of conferences is B-sides, which is like security focused. So
I love
yeah, like sorry.
So I actually went to my first B-sides was last year. I only found out about it, and I did the same SASSA talk, well, a variant of it at B-sides, and it was great. People really enjoyed it. But also, when you go there, it's amazing because you meet so much young potential. Where I look at this kid, I'm like, dude, one day I know you're gonna do something ridiculous,
Dangerous.
And you sit down with like the vendors, like normally you rock up to some conferences and they're just trying to sell you stuff. But you go and you talk to the vendors and you're like, they show you what they're doing and they dive deep into what they do, right? They're not just trying to sell you, they're just showing you. And the talks, they are great. So I can't wait for this year, coming December. Oh, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, shout out to Mr. Goosen. Like, yeah, check out B-sides if you guys don't know about it. It's great. Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, Yuesha, but I'm curious whether you have any specific questions or comments.
Yeah, I think you've touched on various passions and various fears I have. But I do want to just ask a question that kind of precedes the question that Skulk put on the screen earlier, is how do I know? How can I find, like, how do I know if I've been a victim? Is there a way to...
So
check?
One thing that's been very, very good with the SASSA grant is the impact actually hasn't been as bad as it could be. So in the States and the UK, when you get a grant, it's actually put on your credit record, right? So it will be logged as this person is a credit recipient. They are a high-risk individual. You shouldn't issue them a home loan, for example. But the SASSA SRD grant isn't logged on your credit profile. So you actually won't know if you've been an identity fraud victim. And I see my dad's in chat here. Hey, Dad, how's the evening? But bringing him up specifically is because he actually was a victim. My dad is about your age, Skulk. So I think 1960. I'm joking. So
who's your dad?
It's Vishen. I see. He's
okay. I thought I was now for a second like, is Jonathan your dad? Jonathan, but other Jonathan Boyson. Yeah. Like he just commented now, and I'm like, what? Because he's also kind of like my age. So I was like, what? Is he your dad? What the hell, man? Because I know him quite well.
So my dad was actually also had his identity stolen for the SASSA grant.
Yes.
And okay. I was shocked I was testing his ID number. So all you have to do to see if you have a SASSA grant is you go to the SASSA website, you try and register for a SASSA grant. And on the second step, if it says you already have a SASSA grant, you're done. You've been stolen. Now, what you would do is just check your credit profile to see, hey, is there anything out of the ordinary? Unfortunately, I can't go into the two specific banks, which I would have to ask you to go and check if you have a bank account open with those banks. But there's an article out there somewhere, and I can guide you to just go find it. So yeah, the best possible thing you can do is just to stay vigilant and yeah, go from there.
It's just so hard. You touched on the idea of when you enter a security estate or certain buildings. I know there are certain courier companies that ask you for your ID number, and I've always had an issue with security estates. And even before, I mean, I have a background outside of tech, and then I veered into tech in my late 20s, and I now work as a product designer. And it's as if this, I don't want to call it paranoia or fear, because I don't live in constant fear, but there's this, what's the word? There's this consciousness
anxiety
of, No. There's this consciousness in me about all the data, and it's definitely the fact that I work in tech and the fact that I have access to data on our platform where I work, and it's just opened my eyes. And earlier you guys spoke about how it's not the government that builds things, it's contract companies. And I was thinking to myself, we all see these shiny interfaces, or we see the shiny movie. So I have a background in film and TV, and I cannot really watch the movies or the one or two movies I worked on and the TV shows that I worked on, because I know about all the chaos behind the scenes and the emotional turmoil caused me. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that I think the same kind of thing, it's all just this facade. We have the shiny app, and then we trust. And I'm a trained UX designer, and so I've been trained to design interfaces and processes and that people trust. But like, what happens to my data below that? I have this thing where I'm constantly scared, especially now with this AI and everything, of WhatsApp messages. Like, what is Meta doing with all my WhatsApp messages? Apparently it's encrypted, but how do I as an end user know that it truly is encrypted? And how do I, yes, the pop-up comes on the chat, and I think without veering too far off the point, it's just,
the thing that sucks is there's a lot of uncertainty that exists in our world, right? Sure, there's a secure tab there, but a researcher might be able to break through. And the one thing I actually want to bring up is bug bounty, right? So bug bounty, vulnerability disclosure programs are these kind of open kind of invites to, hey, come penetrate us from the public external point of view. If you find a vulnerability, we will pay you out. And this is HackerOne, there's a bunch of platforms out there. There are organizations that will pay you $1 million to find a vulnerability. We're talking big American giants. And, when I first got into security, I was like, oh, surely South Africa has a few of these. I can make money, Oh, I can go, have some extra cash. And you go out and you look and you're like, oh, geez, that's bad. There's none with legitimate bug bounty programs that actually pay out. So I actually run like a simple website called disclosure.org.za. And on disclosure.org, we track how many companies have a vulnerability disclosure policy. So there's a few ways of doing it. You can just have a page on the website. You can put a security.txt. And in South Africa, out of all 250 something public companies, only 7 companies have a way to report security issues to them. And, I've done a lot of security research. And the thing is, it's very, in between the lines of, are you allowed to pen test, and if you find an issue, what do you do? Because the thing is, the bad actors are pen testing all the time, right? If you, sitting at a corporate job at a SOC and, some dude from another country is on your network and exfiltrating data, okay, what do? You can lock them out, but you can't go back in time, You can't then go and arrest this person because they're sitting in a jurisdiction which you don't even have ability to reach it. So one of the things I always try and advocate for is encourage it the right way. Because when you sit down and talk to CSOs in South Africa, they're like, we don't want to pay out because it creates operational risk, right? Which is kind of a guilty admission of, hey, we don't trust ourselves. And I love raving about how South Africa has great security practice all across industry, but I've also seen the bad of it. I've seen the most horrendous, API vulnerabilities out there. I started with web pen testing. I've seen apps that are shambolic across. I mean, I can't even count how many disclosures I've made. And it goes then into okay, I sometimes find an issue, right? Because it's just natural instinct for me. What do I actually do? You get a bit scared of, reporting this actually has a worse outcome. And I made a couple mistakes in my life with reporting vulnerabilities, but I learned the true art of it now. And all you got to do is reach out to someone you trust, right? If you have a mentor out there, or you just know someone in industry, right? So if I know a friend in banking and I just say, how's it, man? Do you know someone from this other bank? I found this security issue. I would like to report it. So you go through your connections. Even if you have a very small network, try your best. The second thing is you have to go in with the intention of you're not getting a payout. Guys, I've received nothing for all the vulnerabilities I've ever disclosed. I've received, you can work for us anytime or come for the holiday, which is actually how I ended up working at Easy Equities. I can speak about this. I duplicated a bunch of money in my account and no one picked it up. And I was like, haha, look. And then they were like, come work for us for the holiday. And like, that's the opportunities you can expect, right? I'm not going to duplicate money and say, haha, now you have to pay me 10 million Rand, because that's unrealistic and that sets precedent. So on security side, what we really need out there is a bunch of cool security researchers that are doing it for the good and the love of the game. Because as my mom and dad says, you're good at what you do. You don't need money now. You're fortunate enough to have, a roof over your head and food. Don't go chasing, the dark web. I'm gonna ransom you for 10 Bitcoin. Don't chase that, because you're gonna end up living in fear. And also, how do you sleep at night? So that's just a little tangent on security research.
Or if you do it, don't tell us.
No, guys, always be ethical on the good side of things.
But to add to that, sorry, Yosha, I just want to quickly add on to something Veer said, is if you discover these vulnerabilities, what do you do? And I think what you did is very interestingly enough, I've also, when was it? I'm looking at the article now. I'll actually share it. It was 2018. This was during the Zuma years, I think. So there was I don't know, Yosha, you would probably remember New Age, which was kind of the Gupta funded newspaper thing,
and then younger than Scott, guys.
And then that turned into Afri Voice or whatever. So it was kind of this there's some ties in with the Guptas and whatever, but it was effectively a news site called Afri Voice, and I, by pure accident, I can't even remember how. I think I'm very similar to you, Veer, but more in terms of the front end and performance and whatever. So when a site's really ridiculously slow, I open up those dev tools and I just what HTTP requests are firing. Yeah, exactly. Especially when it's a news site. It's this is just static content. Why is my CPU fan spinning like this? And I actually, so after a bit of digging, I actually discovered that it was mining Bitcoin in the background. Yeah, and this is kind of and it was, it was kind of it was kind of a Jacob Zuma Gupta website type thing, and so what I ended up doing is the same that you did. Is I kind of contacted a friend of mine, Raymond Joseph, who he worked at Daily Maverick at that point, and I kind of disclosed it to him, and and then he kind of took it, and he's cool, let's write the story about it, whatever. I'll go, let's publish it in Daily Maverick and so forth. So and I think that's the way. I think it's just contacting people in preferably a news outlet like Ground Up or Daily Maverick or so forth. Maybe not SABC News or whatever. No shade to SABC, but
maybe not remember, there's another issue we actually should talk about, and it's
yes,
every action you do kind of have a major consequence.
Yes.
Yes, I definitely put my life at risk. I am very grateful that I made it out. I am, at the end of the day, still a government whistleblower. But it's important that, once you do it once, you'll never want to do it again.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's huge risks, which I felt in the middle of the SASSA. Now, it often means that a lot of the security things I solve these days will go unreported on. For example, I found a critical cybersecurity issue last week in a big five bank, right? Now, you find that, oh man, I can get 6 news outlets to write about me. I'm the best security researcher in the country.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the actual risk of that is
Yes.
can seem very tacky, right? People might
Yes.
not like me. I'm
Yes.
calling out a big company in the news for being bad.
Yes.
So I'd rather just deal with it behind closed doors, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
And you
Yes.
learn things along the way, especially when it comes to cybersec.
Yeah.
And it's a very valuable lesson that took a while to learn.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that kind of covers it.
Yeah. So also the reason why I mentioned that is like obviously, like this is someone I had a personal relationship with that I knew and so forth but also like I think a lot of these news outlets, specifically the ones like Roundup and so forth, which tend to be more investigative journalism as opposed to just like, Marula Media or whatever. Or Huisgenoot. Ooh, shots fired. Like is that they
Putting
also
your
have
life
a
at
very
risk.
yes, yeah, like I'm gonna be like in the Huisgenoot next week. Is like they usually also have a very good sense of kind of like how to handle this type of stuff. Because I know Ray also that I wrote the story with. Like he was also the person that actually uncovered like all that lottery theft and lottery corruption from a couple of years ago. So a lot of these people, they've kind of like gone through this. They understand kind of what steps to take, what should you disclose, what should you do with this information, how do you protect yourself, and so forth. But to your point, it sucks that if you like discover something like this, like now it's like that you're actually thinking like, do I actually even want to open this box, or do I just want to ignore it and pretend because like this can cause so much shit for me? It sucks, man.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It sucks. And the thing is, it's like you sometimes think of it. You're like, okay, what do I do? And 9 times out of 10, you realize just report it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
And you know what? You have people who respond badly. I've dealt with it. I've dealt with, I'm dealing with stuff now still. Where there's a critical issue in somewhere, and no one refused to fix it. And I come from a place of concern, right? I understand the actual business impact. And I mean, when I did my first cyber internship, I learned cybersecurity is not about IT at all. It's about risk,
Yes.
right? So these big corporates, they have this risk.
And it's about humans.
It's about humans, yeah.
Yes.
But they have
100%. Yeah.
risk registers. And, there's an issue, put it as a medium risk, because no one wants to get fired. 2 weeks later, someone found it and stole a bunch of data. So, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's a low issue, medium, high, or critical. The outcome, when it happens, is always going to be critical. It goes to, we shouldn't be rushing things. I mean, it's a very pumped up world. People are competing with each other. They want to get this new feature out or this new product out, and you can't risk things slipping through the track, like through the cracks. Because when that happens, things go wrong. People get affected. Jobs get lost, and reputation damage happens.
Yeah.
As you were speaking now, another analogy came to mind. So I like to make things physical. I'm actually contemplating a talk on the subject. And I like to, when I sit with something abstract in the software space in my specific work, which is very complex and legacy driven, I look at the infrastructure around me. I live just off Main Road in Cape Town, and I look at how trucks drive there, and it was built in a different era. And the reason I'm mentioning that is I think the same around security is, if I have a physical house somewhere in South Africa, I probably have a fence, I probably have a gate, might be electric, might be manual, I might have a garage, I might have an alarm, I might have an AI camera system to help me stay safe. And I've been thinking that the software space is just the same as the physical space, but it's because it's abstract, we don't realize it. And I think we've spoken about education a bit tonight, and it's important that people are educated and understand the risks involved. And I have a few smart devices, and I've put them all on my guest network because I'm paranoid like that. The trade-off is that sometimes Google does not respond when I say turn on the lights. But I wouldn't have known that if I weren't in this space. And if I have a brother-in-law who's also in IT security, cybersecurity, and yeah, I think that just helps me to think about the risk as going, okay, if this was a physical situation, would I just trust like some random company to come and install something in my house? Or would I go and check their reputation? Would I go and see their reviews? But if I have a robot vacuum with a camera in my house or whatever, like it's just, oh no, but it's this company. And again, it comes back to the point I made earlier about it looks shiny and it looks safe, and it's got an HTTPS. I think that's, sorry, I'm not the technical guy in the room. Yeah, I'm rambling.
No, that's good stuff. And I think it's related to like a question Jonathan like asked as well is, so he asked about any intersection with this topic and our POPI laws. Moreover, where can we do better as engineers with safeguarding personal information beyond installing another crypto.js package? But like, and I think that's also like something that's also worth noting is that POPI is a big step forward, because like when my identity theft happened, like was before POPI, which meant that there was no accountability. Like I'll just call them out. Like it was Telkom, Telkom Mobile, where I went to go recount my stuff and all my ID and everything got like scanned and sent somewhere. And when I reported it to them, like they was like, oh no, like it's all good. Like actually, we found out about what this person was doing like a while ago because she was doing it with other people as well, and we fired her. So it's all good. Like it's taken care of. And I was like, what?
That's crazy.
Like cool story, bro. Like okay, cheers. But like at that point, like there was no recourse on my end. It's like, oh, they fired the person. Like it was on that person. There was no accountability on the organization. Like it was all, if I wanted to take legal action, it would be against the person that did it while she was employed. So I think at the very least, POPI does a lot in terms of moving some of that accountability to the organizations themselves. But then the question is, as engineers, like what can we do? And like before I let you answer, Veer, I would probably just say, like for myself, like it would just be like always asking, do we even need to store this personal information? Like can we completely avoid not even having to handle it? Because the thing is with personal information, like it's one of those things, like once you open up that can, like it's just there and it never goes away. Like it's not like once you capture that info, like you just open up this massive world of liability. So, and a lot of times, like I think like the thing is like, and I think this is something that Yuasha also has an appreciation for as a product designer, is that a lot of times like product designers and general like UI and UX people, they kind of design the stuff like, oh, you put in your ID number here, and then it automatically like shows your age or whatever, and it's like, that's a really bad idea in terms of like liability, and like now you've just like opened up. So I think my first thing would just be beyond like the.
Oh, we lost you there.
Still lost. Cable issue.
It's very finicky.
There we go.
But, yeah, it's very finicky. But I think that's also a sign from the universe that I should stop talking. But all I wanted to say is like your first port of call is always like, can we get around to not even having to deal with this? Because then it just becomes about mitigation and risk. But yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Veer.
That's a very interesting way to put it. I mean, if we zone into Poppy, right? Poppy is very good. I think it sets the framework for what data protection would look like. But I think PIA was the government's first priority. For those of you who don't know what PAIA is, you're on a website at the bottom. It's like PIA manual. PIA is like a way to openly get information. So if you send a media inquiry to some government department, you're like, hey, why did this road not get fixed? You said the road got fixed. I want the budget report. You can submit a PIA request, and they're legally obligated to give you that data. But the third act everyone forgets about, it's a lot more recent, Cybercrimes Act of South Africa. And it's a very, very good law and framework that actually sets down what we do with cyber crimes. Because even the people who are investigating cybercrime don't even know how to, what evidence do you need to present in court to get, let a person go to jail for doing what exactly, right? Does enumerating an API mean, oh, we found out who you are, you're going to jail for 20 years, right? Or is it a slap on the wrist? And it goes then into, with safeguarding PII, if we can just not have the data in the first place, it's Christmas. But certain organizations are required to just keep that data. Your financial institutions, they have to keep banking records till the end of eternity. That stuff they cannot get rid of. When someone exits their banking ecosystem, I've dealt with this in industry. Someone, closes a bank account, they retain that information because, data science department 3 years down the line might want to do research on why we're losing clients. And it then goes into, where do you draw that line? How much data do we keep? Do we just not collect certain things? But, HR but marketing wants to know, oh, where exactly does this specific individual with this ID number live? So we can, when a storm's approaching, let's get some grocery recommendations, for that person. And so that's a huge, huge thing. But I hope as we kind of progress into this future with cybercrimes, becoming more of a norm, that people who commit bad actions actually get prosecuted through the Cybercrimes Act and not on something else,
No, 100%. Yeah. There's two Jonathans. There were two Skulks here earlier. There's two Jonathans as well. So Jonathan Aspling, he says, I'm not 100% sure about the principle or where it comes from, but there's something that says always approach security as if you've already been compromised.
That's a very good saying. Yeah. You don't just install a lock on your door at home, an electric fence, and just leave it there. We have alarm systems, we have camera systems. And even when we have camera systems and alarm systems, we still have armed response. You can't just use industry standard authentication and not monitor after. You have to have those SOCs at full capacity, always operational and running. Or if this is a foreign IP address from a high-risk region, why did you successfully log onto this person's account? It goes into an internal policies thing. Are you actually we are technical people in some way, but what about average citizen works a corporate job, gets phished? There's a little bit of training and awareness, but you can't force a person to understand and actually check. And next thing you know, credentials are gone, and someone's able to get on. And these days we've noticed, I tell you from what I've dealt with in the last 3 weeks, there's been a large rise in phishing for South African organizations. And you can put, your different technologies in to safeguard that, but things still slip through the cracks always. It's the world we live in.
Yeah, and that's I was partially joking when I said security is not about technology, it's about humans, because and you might think about like phishing. You might be like, some Nigerian prince who's like trying to give you money or whatever. But like, it's way more sophisticated. Like, you'd be surprised how like much of the like all the recent NPM like security stuff like was because of phishing. So I think the specific one for where there was the breach with, I think it was was it the ESLint one, where they sent an email from, they just switched it up. So instead of npm.js.org or npm.org or whatever, they sent it from MNP. Oh no, NNP.org. So it looks so similar when you see the address where it comes from. And like this is a super technical guy. This is the guy one of the maintainers of ESLint, and like that's how they got him. They sent an email like, oh, you need to verify like whatever, for us to keep your package up or whatever. But yeah, like you'd be surprised. Yeah. I
mean, it's growing. I mean, there was another incident even with NPM. I think it was Axios, right?
Yes, I think no, that wasn't the Axios one. Man, like NPM is just like having a hard time at the moment.
Every time I install packages, I'm just like, please, just don't be a problem today, because there's certain things you just can't, it's out of your control. And I mean, at least the security researchers have found that acting very quick, which is amazing.
Yes.
But I mean, there are CVEs popping up in common operating systems all the time, and then you just have to keep up with the curve.
Yeah, and also just quickly, like Jonathan also says here, like shout outs to Capitec. Like in terms of like the picking up that you're on a phone call when you access the app and warning you it's not then. Wow, that's really great. But I have to say as well, like as far as I understand, Capitec is probably one of the better ones in this space. I think like they also have a very comprehensive way to report like vulnerabilities and stuff, if I'm not mistaken. So also just credit where credit is due. Yeah.
Fun fact. Speaking of Capitec, I've actually had the opportunity to work holiday internships there. So I've spent 4 of my holidays at university at Capitec, and great people there, great stuff. They are moving at an exponential pace with what they are doing. And we speak about the phone call thing, which amazing innovation. I mean, they were the first to actually do that.
Yeah.
And all the other banks have caught up. But one of the things I've actually noticed is so Capitec always goes the mile, the kilometer further. So when you're on a call with Capitec, if it is Capitec, we'll say, hey, you're on a call with us, right? You are speaking to this exact agent. Like that's what they do. Whereas, I mean, I've seen some banks, they implement it, but it's literally just a pop-up. I was on a call center. I was on a call with the call center of this bank. They said I need to open up the app to change some setting, and it was like, you're on a call. And I was just like, but I'm on a call with you. Why are you telling me that? And they're doing a lot in the hardware, device space. They've got something called contact lock, fingerprints your device using a few random contacts. So when you move phones, account hijacking is being decreased, and they're doing great stuff there. As a matter of fact, I'm currently a Stellarwatch student, and their head office is down the road. This beautiful, massive, looks like Apple Park building. That's what we say at Stellarwatch. It's Apple Park of South Africa. And I love going and visiting everyone there. When I got free time.
Yeah, and like this isn't a paid advert or whatever. I'm not even at Capitec. I'm not even at Capitec.
I'm a very happy Capitec customer.
I'm not even at Capitec, but like I also want to give credit where credit is due. There are other considerations to what bank you go with, but like when it comes to this type of thing, they're really on top of their game. But yeah, like I think we're kind of getting close to an hour and a half here. We should probably think about closing this up. So thanks so much for kind of joining. Like, this was really great, man. Like, I can continue talking about this for like another hour. Yusha, also thanks for joining. Where can people get in touch with you? If anyone watches this, a lot of people watch this stuff after the fact, watch the recording. If someone's watching the recording, they have some question that they couldn't pop in the text chat or whatever, where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, the best place is LinkedIn. Pop me a message. I will accept your request. Or send me an email. I, most of the time, won't give my phone number out to people I don't know.
Do you want to give us your ID here on the live stream right now? And your bank PIN code.
I get a lot of messages like, I need your phone number. And I'm like, why? Like, just give me one reason why. But send me a message. I'm always happy to respond or try and provide insights. And I'm always reachable online. And that's the best way. I'm gonna self promo now, right? I have a cool portfolio site. Us as ComSci students, we love comparing them. So veergosai.com. It's just got like a few pictures of me and a little bit about what I do. That's how you can also reach me. My email's on there as well. So
what you can also do is, the man inadvertently doxed himself. You can go to all the houses that's close to Capitec and Stellenbosch and go knock on the doors and ask, is there a Veer staying nearby? It's always Mr. Security himself right here, huh? Yeah, or maybe that was a red herring. He's just like nowhere near there. But yes, dude, like, thanks so much. This is really, really great. Like 100%, like we'll definitely be chatting again at some time in the future.
100%. Right. Thank you for the invite. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate the invite today. And we'll be chatting very soon more.
All right.
Absolutely.
Cool. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.